also, of course. But I think that one report came out stating that John Kerry had more ties to royalty than George Bush actually did. I don't know if that's true, but the one, so to speak, turning away from this, continuity in how things are being run in regards to connection with royalty bloodlines. George Bush Jr. was the first president who won over someone who had more connections with royalty in Europe, I guess. So that might also say something in regards to how important it was for them to actually get Bush Jr. in as a president. Yeah. I don't know, but side note. But that's very interesting. And do you think that again then we can tie this back to that these are the royalties of United States, and they are the kings and queens, but not on the official level?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Unofficially and unrecognized as such, but nevertheless, they still do represent, relatives of Charlemagne and so forth.
Oh, it's amazing, yeah.
And anybody can go to Burke's Peerage website, and they do have a page that is devoted to the American presidents and their family trees. And anybody can examine this for themselves to verify that this is, in fact, the case here.
And there is also bloodline relations between George Bush and, if I'm not mistaken, John Kerry was in there too, but the relationship was, of course, to the historical character of Vlad the Impaler, or actually the one who mythically later become known as Dracula. Did you know that?
Yes, that's correct.
That's some scary stuff, right?
Yeah, actually it's kind of plays into the ideas of how evil got into the political arena, as most prominently discussed by Michael Tsarian.
Sure, exactly. It's amazing. Yeah, it's right there. Okay, so let's see here. One thing that you brought up in your article also was in regards to the IQ play, I call it, between Bush Jr. and Hillary, and on different topics these personalities are presented as coherent in different ways, and I guess we could tie in this in regards to if the question is in relations to war in Iraq and so forth, or if it's in some other area. Would you like to talk a little bit more about this IQ play between these two?
Yeah, what this is, I describe it as a very high-stakes game of good cop and bad cop. And this is, pretty much presented to us as, do you want your New World Order to be peaceful and friendly, or do you want it to be full of military might and so forth? And the way that these two people are being presented to the public through the media is in terms of how they deal with both sides of that very same issue. Because all political, high-level political people have to participate in this agenda to reach these high levels of power in the first place.
Yeah.
And so we see George Bush Jr. as being a very lackadaisical type of detached type of a character, although there's some pretty evil stuff going on behind the scenes. And in terms of Hillary Clinton, she's very upfront about what she believes. And as I bring out in this article, it's a lot of empty rhetoric, because she may, for example, talk about the fact that she would like American women to make a wage equal to men, when in fact she only tells half of that story. And she leaves out the entire part, which describes why women were forced into the workplace to begin with.
Yeah, sure.
And that was because the inflation through the Federal Reserve private banking system and currency had gotten to a point where a single paycheck could not support a family anymore.
Yeah.
But they brought this out as being, feminism and we're going to be equal to men.
Sure, liberation.
When in fact it was anything but that.
Yeah.
And so when she gets elected, she's going to go about the business of continuing this agenda.
Yeah, absolutely, and things are never brought into historical context in that sense anymore. It's just on the focusing on the most recent issue and what's hip and what's not, and as soon as that turn away or changes, they're gonna change with that trend also just as fast. So they're just the people's champions, I guess. They're just it's amazing.
Yeah, the sleeping masses will follow.
Yeah, sure, exactly. That's the idea, I guess, of democracy or democracy. That if you have, as the word implies, then a mob rule or people rule, that serves them perfectly well, because as long as they're in a position where they can rule the people, well, they at that point they don't bother, if the people are, the ones who actually are picking a presidential candidate, for example. But we can always take into account what you brought up in your article, and that is, of course, about all the vote fraud that goes on in regards to black box voting and all of this, and that again is an area that that you said that Hillary had expressed some concern about in regards to vote fraud in the previous election, but again she never tied this back to that, that they're historical, I guess, or more references to it being fraud behind these elections, right?
Yeah, that's correct. This is a perfect example of how she's only telling half of the story here. Because, for example, she could have come out and said that the last two elections should not have been awarded to George Bush Jr. Because, as a matter of fact, and which is backed up by exit polling, it appears that very few people voted for him, and that, Al Gore should be the president at this point.
Yeah.
However, whether it's Al Gore or another 4 years of Junior, I don't think it matters much as long as the same type of legislation continues to go through.
Yeah, it's crazy, all right. Let's talk a little.
One other thing about Hillary that really disturbed me was that she was asked in April of 1993 in Parade magazine, which is a Sunday supplement magazine in the Sunday newspaper here in America. What were the writings that most influenced her political thinking? And her answer to that was George Orwell in his book 1984 and Aldous Huxley in his book A Brave New World.
There we go.
And I was like, oh man, you got to be kidding me. This is bad news.
This is very interesting, and I think that this obviously, connects with the recent, of course, video that was released of the, the original Macintosh advertisement was made in 1984. In regards to all this, is this something that have gotten? It seems like over here, at least, that this is something that have gotten tremendous media attention over there. Is that right?
Yes, it has. In the past week, they've also come out and named the individual who was behind the creation of that ad. And as it turns out, it was a worker for one of these ad agencies who work with these political campaigns. And it wasn't for Senator Obama's campaign. It was just some guy who was working at one of these agencies, did this on his own time, and released this to the, I forget if it was YouTube or Google. They're both owned by the same people now.
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah.
It was up there, nonetheless.
Yeah, I think it was YouTube, but yeah, exactly. So, what's your take on that? I mean, it's fairly it's quite nicely done, actually. It's someone who had some knowledge about how to manipulate images and so forth. It's quite nice. I mean, do you think that there's a hidden meaning in that sense? Is it a psyops? What's the deal with this ad?
Well, for one thing, it represents the thinking and the mindset of what I had begun to speak about today, with the lack of popularity that this woman has as a senator. And it shows exactly what people do think of her. They see her as being this big sister, if we can use that phrase for a moment, version of Big Brother.
Sure, yeah.
And so all the images of that mashup, if you will, of these images is very appropriate, and also puts across a message that's extremely serious, and people should be thinking very seriously about her as a candidate in the context of losing further freedoms as we go forward. And I have described Hillary as a Trojan horse for the New World Order. And what I mean by that is that her election is going to bring a lot of women into the thought that we finally had gotten a woman into the White House.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of true equality of the sexes and so forth.
Sure.
And when in fact, it's just more of the same,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's unfortunate, again, being drawn into this because, because just you're interested in more belonging to a group and get your kind of your side to win, I guess, and I think that it plays emotionally very strong with people, and in a sense, if you're against Hillary, then you're against a woman president and stuff like this also. So you can play this on all kinds of level in order to manipulate people emotionally to get them involved in this process. But one thing that we also wanted to get in here today is speaking a little bit about Hillary's Iraq exit strategy and so forth, and Hillary as I guess as a war president, because there is potential threats or potential a possibility, I should say, that there will be a strike on Iran and so forth. But what's your take on that? Do you think that if the war continues and if the U.S. still stays in Iraq, will Hillary be a person who can handle that? If I say it like that.
Well, as synchronicity has a habit of showing up at important points in my life, this very morning I received a letter from Hillary Clinton in response to a letter I had written to her about that very issue, the Iraq exit strategy idea. And in this letter, which is 1 page and 1 paragraph long, she describes not a complete pullout, which is what should happen, but by the way the global